How exciting would it be for you if you were able to live your life with purpose and passion and profit? Being so centered and grounded in who you are, waking up every day engaged, excited, energized to go do that which you're going to do that day. And in your working years, being able to make a living doing that which you really love. Well, I'm here today to not only tell you that you can, but to share with you some science that I stumbled upon in my own journey that will ensure that you get on this path. And if you're fortunate enough to already be on this path, to make sure that you stay there. Sometimes I find it can be helpful to examine what something isn't to help us better understand what something is or what it could be. So to that end, I'm going to invite you to jump in the car with me for just a moment. Let's just imagine that you've rented a car, and that car is out of alignment. Go ahead and drive your car. Go ahead and get your steering wheel going. It's all good. All right. So what's it like? There you go. What's it like when you're driving that car that's out of alignment? You can feel the tension, right? The resistance. It's just effort-filled, isn't it? And what if you were to let go of the steering wheel in that unaligned car? Then what happens? Where's it going? Where's it going? Where's it going? Yeah, it's just kind of veering off in one direction or another, isn't it? That is exactly what it is like for us when we are out of alignment with ourselves, when we're out of alignment with our purpose. We just sort of make random choices, or maybe the choices that were in front of us at the time, or maybe doing something that someone else thought we should do. I can tell you that for me, the first time that I really recognized that I had veered off and gone into a ditch thinking, how did I get here, was when I graduated college. I was pre-law, UCLA, top honors, ready to go to law school. It should have been such an exciting time for me, but in truth, it really wasn't. It was actually riddled with anxiety because I realized as I was graduating, I didn't want to be a lawyer. Not a good time to recognize that, perhaps. For the first time in my life, I actually didn't know what I wanted to do. You know, I'd probably set that goal when I was maybe 12 years old, a little girl thinking, what do I want to be when I grow up? And when I looked at the landscape, to me, it looked like a nurse. Well, I can't stand the sight of blood. That wasn't going to happen. Or a teacher, or a lawyer. And of those three, I chose lawyer, and I never looked back until I was graduating. So, with that, I took a temporary job. And I say temporary because it lasted for 14 years. Maybe you've had one of those? Yeah. So obviously my roles, my expectations, my responsibilities elevated and escalated during that period. I ended up sitting on the board of directors for that firm. But let me tell you, it did not start out that way. When I took that temporary job, I was quickly recruited into a sales role because I had that sales persona, whatever that means. Now, I've already shared with you that I had veered off track in my career path. What I haven't shared with you yet is that I also veered off personally. I had gotten married rather young. I was going through an early divorce, and I was pretty ill-equipped to handle it. I don't know that any of us is ever very well equipped to handle a divorce, but clearly at 22 I really wasn't. And I got pretty sick. I got down to 89 pounds. So rightfully so, the owners of that company came to me and said, Michele, you don't look good. We're worried about you. And you cannot go out and represent the company looking like this. You're going to need to get healthy and get a doctor's note, and then we'll consider putting you back in a sales role. Until then, we'll have you over here. Oh, can you imagine? How humiliating, how embarrassing, so humbling. And believe me, I thought long and hard about maybe I should just cut bait, get out of here, and never look back. It was an option, but it really wasn't. Because you know that little voice that we have in our head, that internal wisdom? Mine was screaming at me. And it was shouting, Michele, you know, life's lessons are going to keep coming back until you learn them. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. Maybe that relationship that keeps reoccurring, like, really? Am I really dating that same kind of guy again? Really, that same woman? Or how did I end up with this boss again? It's because we just aren't learning the lessons and they're going to keep coming back. Well, for me, in the situation that I was in, I had been through so much pain and discomfort and humiliation, I knew I never wanted to go back there. So I decided I'm just going to keep going forward. I'll come out the other side, and then I'll decide if I want to cut bait or if I want to stay or go. What am I going to do? We'll figure it out then. So that's what I did. So I got healthy, and I got my doctor's note, and they did offer me the job back. And I said, yes, please, I would like to. But I would like to do it a little differently this time. So here I am, all those years ago, talking to my then boss and trying to explain. I wanted to go back and get my master's in something. So here's what I wanted to study. I decided what I wanted to do was go and study about self-awareness, self-development. I really wanted to get clear on who I was so that when I'm sitting there with a potential client, I'm not thinking about what do they think about what I'm saying, what do they think about how I look. It shouldn't be about me. When you're in a sales role, it should be about serving another person. I wanted to be so congruent and clear on who I was, I could get myself out of the equation. The second thing that I wanted to study was communication. How do I make sure that I'm communicating in a way that connects, in the way that they need me to be communicating? Not necessarily the way that was most comfortable or familiar to me. And then thirdly, of course, I wanted to study sales, the art, the science, the technology of it. And so that's what I set out to do. That went on for a number of years. And I can tell you that at the end of those few years, I went from somebody who really should have been fired to amongst the top 2% of female earners in the country before I was 28 years of age. It was a remarkable journey, it really was. Equally remarkable was my understanding and learning of how that had occurred. How had I gone from being such a failure to such a success? Well, I stumbled upon some science a little later on, and that's what I want to share with you, to tell you how exactly that occurred. So this science took place starting in the 1920s. It was actually 1926. A German teacher, philosopher by the name of Spengler wrote a book called Types of Men. We'll give him a pass on the men thing. It was 1926. Okay. In the 60s, there was a gentleman named Allport who then picked up the same science and took it to another level. And then in the 80s, picked up again by a gentleman named Bonstetter, who not only took the science to a deeper level, but also developed assessment tools so that we could actually assess for ourselves where do we fit into this science that we were stumbling upon. This science has to do with motivators. We're all motivated by 6 things. It's just a question of priority and depth to which we go there. So what I want to share with you is what these 6 motivators are. And what I would like you to do is be listening for what are the top 2 that really call out to you, that really drive and pull you, go, oh yeah, that's me, I get it. Okay? So let's walk through them and see where you line up in this, okay? Let's start with what we call theoretical. Theoreticals are people who have a love of learning. If you are one of those people, it's Saturday morning and you're walking by a bookstore, it's going to be very hard for you not to go in. The ones of you that are laughing right now, you are those theoreticals. Okay. Or you might not be a generalist. You might be somebody who has specific areas of interest that you're going to learn deeply and fully and become what we call a subject matter expert. That's possible as well. From a career perspective, you might be drawn into a research role in an organization or in a lab. You might be drawn into academia, a professor. You might be an inventor, somebody who really has to learn something deeply to be able to invent something that hasn't even occurred before. Okay, is that calling to you? Do you resonate? Maybe that's not the one for you. Maybe yours is more what we call social. By social, I don't mean, party guy and party girl. I mean social cause orientation. You have the ability to have empathy for another's plight. You want to make a meaningful difference in the world. From a career perspective, that might look like, certainly somebody who would want to work in a nonprofit organization. In a corporate environment, it might be somebody who works in human resources, wanting to make a difference in the employee population. It might be a psychologist who wants to make a difference in the lives of individuals. Or a marriage and family counselor making a difference in the whole family. Okay, is that calling to you? Oh yeah, I think that one's me. There's a third motivator that we call individualistic. And individualistic has to do with having a really deep-seated need to lead others. It could be in your youth. You're on a football team or you're on a cheerleading squad. You would want to aspire to be the captain of those situations. You'd be the one that would want to lead it. In a company environment, maybe you're on a project team. You would volunteer to be the spokesperson for that team. These people I always think of being like an ascending balloon. They're always going to keep rising to one degree or another. They'll always continue with their rising. So if they're a manager, they're going to aspire to be a director. If they're a director, they're going to aspire to be a VP. A VP, they'll want to be an executive VP. It just keeps going. From a career perspective, this could be somebody who wants to run the organization or run a large line of business in a bigger company. Could also be somebody who's in politics. I can assure you, every president of the United States of America has as one of their top 2 drivers individualistic. They want to lead from the most powerful position in the world. Is this something you can relate to? There's a fourth area that we look at that we call traditional. Traditional you could think of as being like the enforcer, enforcing the traditions of what has been or what it should be. So from a career perspective, think of, for example, law enforcement, a police officer. Or it could be somebody who's drawn toward the military service. In a corporation, maybe somebody who's drawn toward compliance. Or it could be a lawyer, which I found out wasn't for me. Or it could be an accountant, a CFO, the way things should be. Does that draw to you? Now, I'm going to tell you that I saved the best two for last. It's not true because there isn't a best two. They just happen to be mine. Maybe you relate to those as well. The fifth characteristic that we can look at as a driver is what we call utilitarian, and it's about utility. It's a practical, pragmatic approach to things where you want to see the efficiencies of things or you want to see a return on the investment. So from a career path perspective, as far as efficiencies go, you might think of somebody who's in operations or supply chain management would be appropriate. From an ROI, return on investment, clearly, as I was in my youth, in a sales role, right? If I sell this much, I receive this much, right? So it's a very metric-oriented, pragmatic, practical approach to things. Does that call to you? And then the last area is what we call aesthetic. And the aesthetic is somebody who can see the big picture of things, usually before others can. They can see kind of the perfectness of what it could be. So imagine for a moment that you just bought a new home and you want to get it to looking the way that you want it before you move in. You might hire an interior designer. And they might come in and say, okay, so let's move this wall, let's paint these colors, we could use these materials, and you're thinking, I can't visualize this. But they can. They can see it all. Same with an architect. They can see a three-dimensional building from a blueprint. A city planner can see the whole flow of a city ahead of what the rest of us can. A coach can see what's possible for an individual. That's how they're able to lead them and guide them in that direction. Same is true with a business strategist or a consultant. They can see the possibility for the company before they can. They can take them down that path. Does that call to you? So these are our 6 motivators. Where do you fall in here? Is it with the theoretical? Do you have that love of learning? Or is it with the social? You really want to make a meaningful difference in the world. Or maybe it's individualistic. You have that drive to lead. Or perhaps it's traditional, more of the enforcer, as it were. Or utilitarian, efficiencies, return on investment, practical, pragmatic in the way that you operate. Or are you the person who can see the big picture ahead of what others are able to do? It's really important that you take a look and understand what is it that drives you. There is a reason why you are drawn in certain directions and why you are not drawn in certain directions. And these are the clues and the cues to our purpose. They are what keeps us on track. And consider this. Every choice you have ever made has either taken you closer towards your purpose or farther away. So ask yourself this question. Am I happy, satisfied, fulfilled in my intimate, loving relationship, in my family relationships, in my friendships, in my finances, in my faith, in my health, in my career? If you're thinking to yourself, yes, check, 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 that's fantastic. It means that you're living in alignment with your purpose, you're living with passion, and ideally able to make a living doing that which you love. If you were thinking, not so much, whether that was across the board or in one specific area or another, not to worry. That's why we're having this conversation here today, to help you reflect, to adjust, to kind of reset the course so you're not fighting so hard against yourself. You're actually in the flow of what it is that you're meant to do. As an aesthetic myself, who can see the big picture for every one of you, and a utilitarian who can practically and pragmatically help you actually get to that place, I can tell you that my choice to be here with you today, to share just a little bit of my story, to expose you to the science of self, and to inspire you to live the best version of your life by aligning your purpose with your passion and your profit, is the most fulfilling and satisfying choice I could possibly make. For that, I want to say thank you very much.